Hey everybody! And a warm welcome to a new story. Today's story is called Treat Me Like Garbage for 3+ years and Try to Deny Me My Unemployment? We'll see about that, from the ProRevenge subreddit. I hope you like it and will enjoy the time. If you like my content and this kind of videos, please leave a comment and subscribe to my channel. As always, this story is told from the OP's point of view. Enjoy it. This is a bit of a long one, so strap in, grab some popcorn, and enjoy. Happened some years ago. So some background: due to some personal reasons, I needed a new start. Years ago, I moved cross-country to a state famous for its mountains, colors, and legal drug use. Since I had some family that wanted me to drive some items they'd stored on the eastern coast of the US to the state, I agreed and decided on moving since I could easily transfer all of my schooling to another college in the area. My folks were abusive and I moved out about a week after getting a job, but this isn't about them. Enter my old boss. They came from the kind of money that paid their way into an Ivy League school and owns several properties around town. They're also the sort of person who stopped their birth control just to get pregnant and keep their equally douchey boyfriend around. Just some background and used to establish character. The details and background. My new job was working as an assistant. I thought that it was odd that the interview was at a Starbucks, but I needed the job. I accepted minimum wage as a 1099 employee. Yes, I know I was dumb at the time, don't worry, I've learned better and started. My new workplace was out of their basement. Odd, but I'm a good guy, so I roll with it. Folks, I'm not exaggerating in the least when I say I worked sometimes upwards of 70+ hours a week. This was a job that was pitched to me as part-time. After months there, I did everything from answering phones, running social media and websites, drafting estimates, doing all IT work, some minor cleaning, and generally trying to help out this business in any way I could. I bent over backwards and then some more. Years later, I realized I set an impossibly high standard for myself and others as the first employee of this business. Fast forward to some years in the future. I had left due to some stress-related health concerns. Essentially, I had a small stroke because of the stress and berating. I later came back, as I was and still am a very pay-it-forward person, and felt that I owed the company for getting me a start in an industry that got me out of retail. I've since learned better in this respect too. The work environment was never great. Any small mistake was treated as a large offense. Instead of this being a red flag to me, I doubled down, did beyond my best to check all work, and even taught myself some coding and server management that would help the business. Business started to pick up and we were soon busy enough to be able to afford a new location. I had suggested leasing a place near our primary clientele. We also needed to hire more staff since the workload was too much for 2 people. Before I left the first time, I had trained 2 office personnel. The company had also promoted me. As anyone who has worked in a small business can tell you, you'll wear a lot of hats. So my job title was somewhere around estimator, office manager, field representative. The owner had also bought a house in a residential neighborhood with the intention of renovating it to be our new office. Problems and red flags. Well, any business has its problems, here's the ones for this company. New office was a house. The lot was zoned for residential. This was apparent at the time of purchase. While homeowners can pull permits, you have to actually pull the permit for the work. We couldn't keep staff or subs to save our life. Turnover was ridiculous. The owner was using the business accounts as their personal accounts. Anytime the owner came back in, all staff were expected to drop what they were doing and listen to their tirade and demands. God's help you if you forgot anything or didn't do it to their exact, sometimes incorrect specifications. or the specifications they came up with and didn't tell you about. The owner would scream, shout, and fume with staff. The owner dated subs. The owner often requested that I forge or backdate paperwork. I'm a notary, this is not only illegal, but I could lose that privilege. The owner and other workers would smoke pot on the premises. I'm cool with recreational use, but don't partake myself. We would have to constantly juggle credit cards, accounts, and other funds, often begging the owner to be able to pay our suppliers to end the throng of endless, angry phone calls and emails asking for payment. The owner was a serial appointment canceller. Often, I had appointments dropped into my lap past the time I would need to actually travel there and arrive on time. After more than 3 combined years of verbal abuse, threats and demands for payment, dealing with a revolving door of angry staff, and having more than one occasion where subs threatened me and the office staff for not being paid, I was ready to leave. I put in my notice as I was having the same stress-related health issues. The owner panicked and offered to sit down and talk things out. I had no intention of going back to working for $13 per hour, with no benefits, and dealing with downright childish behavior. I hadn't even been sat down for an interview, offered any sort of salary when I came back, and jumped in because they desperately needed the help. I knew that and got straight to work. But here we were in a public shop, talking things over, and I explained the issues in this toxic environment and how it was affecting me, why I was leaving, and that I was sorry things had turned out this way. To my surprise, they came back with a counteroffer for a fair wage, praised my work, threw in some benefits, and offered to let me work from home for a large percentage of the week. I was still working on lining up a better job at the time, and due to a series of equally bad employment situations before. Don't work for a GC if you can help it, I needed to rebuild my savings. I agreed and had written proof of this agreement. 3 months go by, and for nearly every week I've received multiple calls after my shift asking why I haven't been doing X, Y, Z task. Why, insert insurance or customer name, hasn't paid up yet. And, of course, being called into the office more due to the needs of the business. Anytime I'm in the office, I'm putting out more fires than the New York Fire Department. Their bookkeeping assistant treats me like garbage. Anytime I had to teach them how to use a new system or even Excel, I'm met with opposition, stubbornness, and later would receive complaints about how I was being condescending to them. In truth, they were very computer illiterate and unqualified for their position. But they worked for next to nothing and would flatter the owner. They were generally two-faced and a brown-nosser. The company also had a new office manager since I was working on mostly estimates and negotiations. This was one of the 2 I had trained, and they were a sweetheart. They deserved more than they got there, and were days where I had found them breaking down crying. The owner treated them worse than they had treated me, and so did their bookkeeper. I felt sorry for them, and eventually, they were fired. It's unfortunate, but they are doing better now from what I've heard. Well, when the office manager was fired, bookkeeper and the owner drafted up a ton of fake write-ups, backdating them, forging signatures, and generally trying to make them look like the worst worker to ever exist. I was upset. This was someone who had been in a similar position that I had been in. Saved from the world of retail and trying to gain experience to get a better job. They were a hard worker and set the standard impossibly high. The customers loved them, and they ran the office like a well-oiled machine. I honestly think that they had done a better job than I had in some respects. I brought up how the office manager, as indicated by the write-up form, was entitled to a copy of the form. That backdating and what was done here was not only inappropriate but illegal. Both bookkeeper and the owner brushed off what I said. Big red flag. At this point, I started looking for other work. I was in the office nearly every day, and I had even gotten there early enough to open up on most days, then close. I was miserable and kept having chest pains due to the stress. During this time, I was trying to get approval to go on hormone replacement therapy (HRT) since I am trans. In order to qualify, you have to be of certain health requirements. Having a high BP will disqualify you for very valid health reasons. Due to where I live, I had to drive over an hour away to be seen for these services. Bummer, but I do it anyway. It takes over 6 months to get an appointment, where I'm told that I need to lower my blood pressure, or I can't safely start HRT. I'm devastated, I cried, I got seriously depressed, and it only made things worse. To the point that my toxic work environment had stressed me beyond stressed. I came home one day, walked past my roommate like a zombie. Went into the shower in our bathroom fully clothed. Turned on the cold water, and just laid there for an hour. My roommate had been urging me to quit. Seeing the employer abuse, how upset I was, and how my depression was starting to spiral out of control again. Instead of quitting, I put together a solid business plan. Job descriptions, improved workflows, and really just a huge document on how to UNF your business. Presented the product of several hours of my own time to the owner, who dismissed it in a loud bar where we could barely hear each other. After 3 more months of waiting and trying to prompt change that would never come, I quit. The revenge. Since I had left without lining up another immediate job, and frankly, need therapy. I applied for unemployment benefits due to health reasons. In my country, you can be awarded benefits if you meet a set of strict criteria, which, after a good day of research, I realized I did meet. I had never applied for unemployment in my life. And having grown up with family that were a mix of benefits fraud poster children and welfare queens, I never wanted to use the system. But I had bills to pay and needed the time off to pick up my mental pieces after everything that had happened and I was going through. My roommate and I were running low on our savings, so I needed the unemployment. Swallowing down my pride, I applied, and after over a month of back and forth and paperwork, I received my unemployment award. We breathed a sigh of relief as I continued to recover and look for work. 3 months go by and we're past the period of an employer being able to dispute a claim. Again, sigh of relief. I was nearly certain that they were going to try and file against me. Well, I was right. Turns out they had lied and gotten an extension filed against my claim, claiming that I was fired for poor performance. I was livid. How dare they insinuate that I did anything less than give 100% at that festering hole of toxicity they called an office. I worked well past my shifts. I had learned and set up the systems and documents they used for nearly everything, and I had treated their company as though it was my own, sacrificing time, sanity, health, and even some of my own equipment to ensure it succeeded. I kept going when so many had walked away from the dumpster fire that was their business. F this. F the owner and F this. I immediately and angrily started my research to build my case. I read the document, and the hearing was scheduled as a phone hearing in front of a deputy representing the department. There's also a deadline to submit supporting documents. The very latest you could submit documentation for both the former employee and employer was within 24 hours before the scheduled hearing. Over the next 3 or so weeks I gathered up years' worth of notes from medical providers I had seen, statements from former employees, witnesses to both my mental state and the state of the office environment, etc. When the office manager had left, they filed for unemployment, which they were justified in. The owner had laughed, drafted up false write-up forms, filed for an extension. And the office manager's claim was decided that the office manager didn't have enough proof and documentation. They hadn't bothered to turn in any and lost their claim. Which means that the claimant has to pay back any money awarded. The owner and bookkeeper laughed and carried on, bragging about their handiwork. Now, I knew that there was going to be a fresh stack of fake write-up forms with my name all over them. I was the one who had authored the write-up forms. I've never once had a write-up form in any job I've worked. I waited until 10 minutes before the deadline, used an online faxing service, and faxed over copies of all of my supporting documents to both the former employer and the deputy for the hearing, leaving the company no time to turn in any documentation. I kept copies of the faxes to both of them, along with the successful notification that they had been received by both parties. If they had any documentation, they had to send it to both parties. Since I hadn't gotten anything from him or the deputy, I knew I was the only one walking in with ammo. Upon further research, I discovered that I could attend the hearing in person, which I was more than happy to. Armed with a bulging folder full of evidence, collared shirt, tie, and a beaming smile on my face, I shook hands with the deputy and they called my former employer. Bookkeeper answers the phone, we're sworn in, all documentation is listed and verified that it has been received. And they give the employer's side of the story. My gods, to say that they bashed me would be an understatement. Speed bumps take less abuse. I didn't work. My work was sloppy. I was rude to customers. I refused to go into the office, and so on. At this point, I'm honestly doing my best to keep quiet and not laugh. They even tried to say that because I was trans, I left because of that. Makes no sense, but okay. I give my statement, which I had written out and practiced several times before this hearing. All the while Bookkeeper continually interrupts me and the deputy has to tell them to let me speak, as I did the same for them. I finish and we start going through the evidence. Of course Bookkeeper is waffling, saying they have evidence. Emails and write-ups, both easy to fake since they controlled my employee email account. And starting to reference evidence that neither I or the deputy have received. The deputy has to interrupt them and state that anything they have is inadmissible since they didn't turn it in before the generous deadline. They are livid and I can tell in the background that the owner is feeding them things to say. Bookkeeper is not the sharpest spoon in the knife drawer, which was an old habit of theirs for anyone who answered the phone in the office. I spend my sweet time going through the mountain of evidence I have. I'm interrupted several times and politely ask in my most honeyed of tones. Bookkeeper, I let you speak freely, can you please do the same for me? They are livid. Both the deputy and I could hear the seething rage over the phone and the poor deputy just rolls their eyes over the course of the hour, having to remind Bookkeeper that they are under oath, as they made several contradicting statements. After hearing the evidence from both sides and several claims by Bookkeeper of, this is the owner's bread and butter, you're taking food from their kids' mouths. To which, I calmly reply, oh, excuse me Bookkeeper, I'll keep that in mind during this hearing, and when I go to pay rent. The deputy got a chuckle out of that but had to ask me to keep it civil. To add to this buttery, decadent role of sweet revenge, one of my witnesses was called who was a former employee. Not only did they back up my story, but they got to enjoy jabbing them back too. Needless to say, a few weeks later I got the results of the hearing and the deputy had ruled in my favor. There was a period of time where both parties were welcome to repeal the decision and we would appear in another hearing. At that time, recordings of the exchange would be made available to both parties. They never repealed. You would think this would be the end of my revenge. Admittedly, it's not bad, but not pro-revenge material yet. It gets better. Before I had left, one of the many bills that had been perpetually left unpaid were the insurances for the company, which included their unemployment insurance. I smiled each time I deposited my check, knowing full well that there was a very real possibility that over $7,000 of my unemployment came directly from them. But I wasn't done. My professionalism had been insulted and dragged through the mud. You see, I knew nearly everything that was going on in that company. I had made their systems, documents, edited contracts, and was ingrained in nearly every aspect of their operation. I knew they were facing an audit by their former insurance provider. I called their former insurer and spoke with the auditor. I detailed all of the OSHA, federal, and state violations. I also informed them of the paperwork forging that I had seen while I was there and of several unsafe practices. They thanked me for my time and I happily ended the call. Next stop, the IRS. I made a report and gave detailed information in regards to their records and even provided why they were not able to file on time. Again thanked for my time and honesty. Afterward, I decided to touch up with a few of my friends with the regional building department. They were more than happy to listen. In the 3 years I had worked there, I had the opportunity to meet and get to know several local businesses and their assistants around town. I spent the next 2 weeks calling and emailing several key businesses in the area that were their suppliers, vendors, subs, and labor suppliers. I never said an untrue word, asked if they had time to talk, and summarily, was thanked for my time. Funny thing about their assistants too, they control scheduling and answer the phones. I'm on good terms with several of them and they backed my story. Wouldn't you know it, their business address was mysteriously devoid of their trailer, equipment, and signs not long after. They still have an online presence and probably will as long as their family continues to bail them out. I'm writing this after years because after working for several bad employers, I now have a good job with an amazing company that supports me. It's the result of my years of experience, credentials, and having to eat SHT for all those years. What do you think about this story? Tell me your thought in the comments. If you like the story and the content, please leave a like, subscribe and share this video. Also have a look into my playlist for more entertaining stories.
Hey everybody! And a warm welcome to a new story. Today's story is called Friend and I Take What Was Supposed to Be a Concert of a Lifetime, I End Up Ditching Him and His Friend in Another City. From the ProRevenge subreddit. I hope you like it and will enjoy the time. If you like my content and this kind of videos, please leave a comment and subscribe to my channel. As always, this story is told from the OP's point of view. Enjoy it. This happened when I was just out of high school. When I was in grade 9 and 10, my best friend and I hung out together constantly. We had known each other through sports when we were younger, but it wasn't until high school we really started hanging out. I have to say this story has 3 people. Me equals me. BF is my best friend. And A is his asshole buddy who never liked me for whatever reasons. Anyways, at the time I was into punk rock and he was into folk, hippie music. His favorite was Neil Young. I would laugh and poke fun at him for his shit music, and I admit I never knew who he was or his music. One day I was helping BF clean his room. His mom said he couldn't go out until it was done, so I helped and I came across a Neil Young tape. I remember it had 2 albums. After the Gold Rush and Harvest. Again I poke fun about his taste in music and he said to me, you know, you shouldn't make fun of his music if you've never listened to it. For whatever reason it dawned on me that he was right. So I told him, you know what? You're right. I'll take this home, listen to it, then I'll poke fun at ya tomorrow. Fair enough. So I go home and listen to the first song on After the Gold Rush. The song was Tell Me Why. I couldn't believe how much I loved it. The style, the acoustic guitars, the harmonizing. I ended up listening to it 3 times in my parents' kitchen and then I listened to the whole album. I was blown away and the next day I told him sorry, I was wrong, and Neil Young is now one of my favorites. He actually was the one that got me out of punk music and into the 60s, 70s hippie sort of music. So we hang out constantly for a couple years and things are great. One day we're hanging out listening to Neil, getting some puffs in on a reefer, when we both agreed that we want to see Neil Young play Live on Day. We made a pact that if we ever stopped being friends, if life ever got in the way of our friendship and we drifted apart, that we would still, no matter what, go see Neil together. Sounded like a great plan. So a couple years go by and of course we had drifted apart. We both had new friends and hardly ever spoke anymore. One day I get a call from him out of the blue. He says, Neil Young is going to Calgary for a show. Are we going? I was super excited and, I guess in a sentimental nostalgic way, felt nothing but good love for my old friend. We hung out again and we were both so stoked that our old promise came to fruition. Supposed to be show of a lifetime, right? Of course not. Now I have to tell you, during the 2 years we had drifted apart, he started hanging with the one I call hole. He and I never got along and that's that. I didn't know why he liked the guy so much since he was always a total prick to almost everyone, and he never had any money. Always bumming smokes, weed, food, all the time. So the day of our road trip comes up, and I'm super happy. I drive to my BF's place to pick him up and all is well. Once he gets in my car he says, hey man, we gotta stop by AH's place so I can drop off a sweater. I thought that was weird since it wasn't cold out and hardly a desperate need for a sweater on a nice weekend. But he did have a thick sweater in his hand, so whatever. This wants his sweater. This is where things go downhill. We pull up to AH's place and there's the piece of shit standing on his stoop with an overnight bag. I turn to BF and say, what the motherfucking fuck, dude? Why the fuck does have a bag? BF proceeds to tell me that he invited along and he admitted he lied to me because he knew no way in hell I would drive to go get him. I told BF I thought this was our thing, Neil Young. As promised years ago. He felt bad I guess, but nowhere near as bad as I think he should have felt. Anyways, the drive to Calgary was them having a great time with me driving the whole 7.5 hours. Of course had no smokes, no weed, nothing but enough money he was hoping would be enough for a cheap nosebleed section ticket. At least he wouldn't be sitting with us though. Didn't even offer up a cent for the hotel either. We go to the concert, have an awesome amazing time, and I was hoping things would be looking up. After the concert I decided to go out with a couple friends I hadn't seen in a couple years. They lived in that city obviously. We went out without BF and had a drunken awesome time. It was the first time I tried ecstasy and I have to say I was wrecked. The part that makes me look like an asshole is the fact I was driving. I ended up parking in downtown Calgary and walking a long way to find my hotel. I eventually found it and went up to the room and ended up passing out underneath the sink by the bathroom around 3 a.m. I somehow managed to wake up an hour before checkout and man I felt like total shit. So much hungover and not feeling all that hot, haha. Those were the days. So I pack up my heavy bag and my guitar. I used to play in a band with BF in high school, so I thought it would be nice to sing our old songs on the trip. Never did because of I leave the room carrying what felt like 1,000 pounds of shit to the lobby only to see my BF and sitting there happily eating breakfast. I talked to them for a minute to tell them I had to go find my car as it was somewhere in downtown Calgary. They smile and say sure, they'll be waiting for me in the restaurant. I go lugging my heavy shit and it took me well over an hour of walking all over downtown looking for this stupid car. I almost screamed when I turned a corner and finally found the car. My arms are killing me, the hangover is killing me, and all I can think of is getting into the car for the terrible drive home. The sooner I get into the car, the sooner I can get home. I put my shit down and go into my coat pocket. No keys. I'm frantic as I look in every pocket I have. No keys. I was pissed. I somehow knew my BF had something to do with this. To make things worse, while looking for my car I ended up going in all directions, so I was confused as to where my hotel was now. It took me about half hour to find it, all while still carrying my heavy shit. I finally find the hotel and angrily go into the restaurant, and I see BF and A smiling at me like I was the butt of some joke. I marched up to them with fire in my eyes and their deaths on my mind. I looked at BF and said slowly with lots of anger, "Give me my F*** keys now." He laughs and hands them to me. I ask why the fuck he would take my keys from my coat as I was passed out. His reason was moronic. He told me, "I knew you were pissed off, came along with us, so I took your keys so I would know I have them and you couldn't take off home and leave us in another city." I asked why the fuck he would let me go look for my car without my keys when he knew full fucking well I didn't know exactly where my car was and I was going to have to do a major search in a huge downtown area. I don't recall his answer, but it was likely a stupid smile, like he had pranked me or something. I looked at both BF and A and said without a lick of heat, "I'm leaving this fucking place right this fucking second and I'm not coming back. If you and A aren't right behind me to get the car, I'm leaving to drive the 7.5-hour drive home alone." They literally laughed at me like I was a joke to them, as if they were so important I would never go through with what I said. Their laughs faded away as I again walked to get my car. Of course I didn't go back and I got to my car, went to the local gas station for directions to the highway home. This was long before Google Maps and internet and happily went on my way. I heard later from BF, he didn't cut me off completely after that, surprisingly, and he told me how once I left he and A both were like, "He's joking, hey. What do you think? Nah, he's never ditch us here, no fucking way." They waited and waited and they finally realized the worst. I kept my word and fucked off back home without them. BF told me they tried to hitchhike home but no one would pick them up. Then he told me it started to rain super bad. I knew because it rained a lot on my comfortable drive home. BF said he eventually had to beg someone back home to send him money so they could rent a car, haha. That's basically the end of it. I had told BF that I felt he ruined our trip by bringing along someone he knew didn't like me. So I don't see how he would have thought I was joking about leaving them, especially after he stole my keys and laughed after he knew I'd be fucked once I found my car. He also knew how sick and hungover I was. It's funny because I was reminded of this story when I saw BF at the local Safeway store today. He never held a grudge against me, nice to say. However, for the next 20 years would see me and yell Calgary as a hello and a goodbye. I see him around once a year and last time at the bar he was a bit drunk and all his anger came out again. All that became of that was me telling the people at the bar what he was so pissed about and us all, minus A, having a good laugh. This is my first pro-revenge post, so thanks for reading. What do you think about this story? Tell me your thought in the comments. If you like the story and the content, please leave a like, subscribe and share this video. Also have a look into my playlist for more entertaining stories.
Hey everybody! And a warm welcome to a new story. Today's story is called "So You Want to Falsely Accuse Me of Touching Your Kid, Huh? Let's Dance," from the ProRevenge subreddit. I hope you like it and will enjoy the time. If you like my content and this kind of videos, please leave a comment and subscribe to my channel. As always, this story is told from the OP's point of view. Enjoy it. Background: I work in social work with individuals with intellectual disabilities. Part of that work involves working with children who have mental health issues, CMH. I am currently the only male staff in the area who's qualified to work with kids because it requires a ton of special training. The cast: me, a 25-year newbie to social work. BK, brat kid, a decent kid with some brat-like tendencies and one awful a mother. BM, brat's mom, BTCH mom, or piece of literal, non-figurative SHT, take your pick. DW, Daniel Fing Webster, the greatest lawyer who ever lived, reincarnated into a local defense attorney. With that all said, let's get down to business. Exposition: time to do the adult thing. In 2012, I moved out of my parents' home and back to the town where I went to college, having taken a job at a local social workplace. It's a great place. Has its issues much like any similar business, see my other posts. But at the end of a day, their heart is in the right place. One of my duties early on was to work with 3 kids, BK and 2 others, in a neighboring town, 15 meters away or so. Each Wednesday 3 male staff would all go over and hang out with kids. It went well, each kid pack bonded with a different member of the party, and we made great strides with them. The kid who pack bonded with me was of course BK. Most of their issues involved behavioral stuff. So we had to stop them from picking on each other. Mostly though, we played Minecraft and Roblox. Yeah, I got paid for that. It was the best, and it went on for about 6 months or so till school got out in May of 2013. When summer went by, BK was out of the party cause he had other stuff to do. Camp stuff, Anyway, summer gets out, and BK is back with the group. Now, as I was preparing to work with him again, I'd heard around the office his mom was quite a pill. Now, we live in a tiny little conservative community, and unfortunately the populace is a bit racist. The woman's Hispanic, and I'd noticed a trend that any Hispanic parents were often disparaged in the office, so I didn't think much of it. Rising action, why the hell didn't I see this coming? My first time back with the kid, we decided to go swimming. Now, we'd done this before, usually with 2 staff, but the kids aren't that much of a handful, so I took the shift on my own. NBD, right? Anyway, swimming goes well, but when we're getting out of the pool and in the locker room, I get dressed on my own, then come out to find BK just standing there, naked as the day he was born. I encourage him to get dressed and he says no. Again, while avoiding any eye contact whatsoever, hey, that ceiling tile is interesting AF, ya know? I tell him again he needs to get dressed. BK says, if you don't let me do what I want, I'll say you touched me. Excuse me, what the F? I play it off as NBD, telling him, well then I won't be able to work with you anymore. He apologizes. I get back to the office and say, hey, by the way, this kid threatened to say I touched him. Boss and I make a note of it and we both agree he had to have heard it somewhere. As the fall goes on, kids having trouble in school. Mom behind the scenes is apparently trying to convince people that one of the other kids at group is touching him. I don't put 2 and 2 together, but def stand up for the other kiddo. He's very into women and thinks boys are icky. BK, on the other hand, is about as touchy-feely as Liberace in a penis factory. I note this all in doc, of course. Mom continues asking me to work with him one-on-one. Again, no connection made. Sweet, more money. I do it. Documenting thoroughly, of course, anytime he does weird SHT, which is increasingly often. It's all going pretty well, then comes my TIFU moment. Climactic moment, this is theater lingo, not sex, you damn perverts. So once a month, we do a kids overnight at a neighboring town. We go to a hotel, swim, play video, and so on. Come November, boss is encouraging me to let some of the kids I work with go along, so I tell parents. Only BM is really interested, so BK goes with. All goes well, till bedtime anyway. At this point, BK snags the big bed that's usually reserved for 2 kids. I have to stay in the room with him, so I get a blow-up mattress ready. Then the little SHT asks me to use the bed too. Excuse me, what the F? We of course have separate beds, but it really didn't matter in the end. On January 2nd, it happened. BM made a formal accusation. She went down the line saying I did everything in the book at every location we'd ever visited on our outings. Diddled him in the library, diddled him at the park, diddled him in the hotel room, with vivid account of penetration for good measure. Now, this is the point in the story where BM's job becomes incredibly important. See, she works at Department of Human Services. aka the place in my state that hands out food stamps, welfare checks, and accusations of child abuse. She's just a food stamp pusher, but she likes to use discrimination as a battle cry anything doesn't go her way. And so despite no evidence, she forced the issue. DHS makes a formal 30-day analysis, and when it's all done, guess what? I'm cleared. End of story, right? Nah bro. Mom appeals, without my knowledge, and adds an hour-long dull therapist session into the evidence, without my knowledge. The case goes from unfounded to confirmed, founded and placed, without my knowledge. March 28, 2014. Suddenly I no longer have a job and can't work in my chosen field for 10 years. Excuse me, what the F? Falling action, enter Daniel Fing Webster. So up until now it's probably not been super clear why mom's pulling this SHT. Thing is, she's out of home because she's out of money, and she wants to sue my place of employment to get a new home. Currently they're living in a donation house that's set to be demolished. I find out this and other facts during my investigation period. At this point revenge isn't on the mind, I just want to get out of the hellhole I've been thrown into. First thing I do is start asking around town. Lady has a rep, after all. I talk to the cop who refused to arrest me due to no actual evidence, and he says she's been pulling SHT with him for years. For example, he's trying to get the library director arrested for refusing to cancel her overdue fine, discrimination of course. We talk for some time and he ends it with, well, maybe I'll start telling her no a bit more. I then head over to the library, and sure enough, the director's all too happy to chat with me, off the record of course due to confidentiality. The conversation ends with, well, maybe I'll call her about getting that fine paid. This continues for a few stops as I slowly release her stranglehold on prominent community members, effectively ostracizing her. At one stop, someone suggests I head to a local lawyer who's well known for not taking any SHT. I head over to his office and we chat a bit. He agrees to take the case for half price. At first, he thinks I'm a raving lunatic with serious paranoia issues. As time goes on, he collects evidence that paints a very clear picture of what she's doing. He says to me, you know, I think she's making the whole thing up to get a lawsuit. The state's attorney general, yes, really, at first can't understand why he's giving out subpoenas faster than Charlie Sheen gives out STDs, but after seeing the evidence she gets on board too. Only problem is the local DHS does not. See, they want a definitive answer, not a settlement. Why? 'Cause they want to fire BM. By this point, DW can't stand those a-holes, but we have to let it play out. My favorite moment from this period is a phone conference where BM calls in, trying to stop my appeal and gets told to shut the F up by Attorney General and DW. She leaves the call sobbing as she's kicked off by her own counsel. At last, we determine in settlement that I take a polygraph. If I pass, the state drops everything. If I fail, I drop my appeal. If it's inconclusive, it goes to trial. Now, DW straight up says, I never tell people to take polygraphs. People say one thing and the polygraph shows another. It's almost never good for a case. But you need to take that polygraph. He did this under the full understanding that we could walk at any time if it appeared to go in a direction we didn't like. And I said yes because, quite frankly, I was out of money. So I take the polygraph. And pass. In the minimum amount of time allotted for the test. Merry effing Christmas. Denouement, sweet, sweet revenge. Now, as you may have been noting, I've been taking little actions here and there to prevent this woman from exercising influence. Hoo boy did they add up. After my polygraph test, the woman was immediately fired. The other DHS employees had throughout been telling my bosses she's a fing moron, and suddenly they're not allowed to say anything about her. They dropped her like the dirty rotten beer SHT that she is. I immediately file a cease and desist order to prevent her from saying one damn word about me. My boss calls me in, yes, I got my job back, looking very angry. She says, do you have any idea what you've done? Then grinning, tells me BM pulled her kid from our program. A few weeks later, I'm walking through Walmart, and guess who I see? Their newest employee, BM. I take the high road and avoid her while simultaneously taking the low road and asking others who know her what's going on. Turns out she lasted a month or two at Walmart before trying the same damn SHT and getting kicked out on her A. Last I heard, she moved out of state and was later seen trying to file her taxes illegally in our state. Her own lawyer screamed her out of his office. In the end, I don't know how much my own actions actually brought about her downfall. She more or less did it to herself. I just saw her on a cliff and pushed. Silly BM. You thought I'd be an easy mark. TLDR, woman tries to accuse me of touching her kid, inadvertently sets up every aspect of her downfall. I help. Obligatory number 2. Let me make it very clear that I don't want any politicization. My current stance is that I believe survivors until they are proven wrong. DHS did their job in taking this seriously, and my lawyer did his job in disproving it. I had previously said the system works, but I now realize this wasn't accurate in conveying my opinion. The system is horribly broken, but it is most often broken in favor of people like me. I don't want my story being used as an excuse to deny victims a voice. I also don't want any racist BS. People often use their skin color, ethnicity, religion, etc. to get free things. This is just an extreme example. The woman's unbalanced AF, but she is not representative of a whole. Last but not least, this was an administrative appeal, where far more onus is on me than necessary to prove the appeal is warranted. If you're offered a poly with conditions in a criminal proceeding, it can only hurt you. Thanks for reading and keeping it respectful in the comments. Edit, I figured I'd best explain what a polygraph is for those unfamiliar. In simpler terms, it's a lie detector test. How it works is actually very different from what you see in the movies. What happens is a highly trained state agent comes in who specializes in lie detection. He talks to you for about 2 hours to get a good gauge on who you are, then he tells you what the questions are going to be. There are 10 questions, and 2 to 3 of them are asking you about the allegation. The other 7 are about random things, with 1 question you're supposed to lie about. After you go over the questions, you get hooked up to the machine. There are several rubber probes put on various parts of your body, and you do a test run 10 questions. He tells you if you need to calm your SHT, I did. Then he runs 3 to 5 frames of the same questions. If the results are still inconclusive after 5 frames, it's judged as inconclusive. If you fail the test, there's a higher than average possibility you're lying. As you have the same responses to the 3 allegation-related questions as you do to the control question. If you pass the test, there's a somewhat higher than average possibility you're telling the truth. The control question helps gauge if you're cheating the test or just really good at lying. These precautions are all because a polygraph test on its own can tell you very little. Without it, the test would be entirely worthless. And no, it is not admissible in court as hard evidence generally speaking, though often as part of a settlement deal. People agree to take the polygraph to avoid administrative court as I did. What do you think about this story? Tell me your thought in the comments. If you like the story and the content, please leave a like, subscribe and share this video. Also have a look into my playlist for more entertaining stories.
Hey everybody! And a warm welcome to a new story. Today's story is called That'll Be Your Wallet and Your Ego, Sir. From the ProRevenge subreddit. I hope you like it and will enjoy the time. If you like my content and this kind of videos, please leave a comment and subscribe to my channel. as always this story is told from the OP's point of view. Enjoy it. That'll be your wallet and your ego, sir. First off, yes, I get it, the tool shop I worked in is a dude's playground. However, I know many men who don't even know how to change a tire, let alone work an air compressor. Their lost looks are easy to spot as well. As a retail store, almost all the staff just sell equipment they don't use, or even know how to use. It's not now, nor has it ever been mandatory to know what you sell, beyond price, in retail. If you do know, the staff rely on you to help make sales and keep the angry customers at bay. I was the go-to person for drills, jacks, and air tools. Also, to deal with the hot-headed customers, who want their way in everything. Anyway, as a logistics supervisor of said tool store, I would be forced to leave the customer-free stockroom to perform leader on duty, LOD tasks on the sales floor for an hour or two, or to cover the sales supervisor's breaks. As a backroom worker, this means I'm forced to be idle for an extended period of time while my work and production falls behind. I am not allowed to stock the floor, do my paperwork tasks or anything that would be considered a heads-down task, i.e., sweeping, cleaning the registers, cashiering, picking up open products people stole from. I was only allowed to get cash for the registers, greet people coming in the door with a retail smile, and ask the usual retail questions. How are you doing? Finding everything okay? Is there something I can help you with today? I was about halfway through the lot hour when Mr. Hardhead, Mr. H, walked in the door, with the classic lost look on his face. I look at his hands and see a receipt. So I know he's about to return an item he doesn't know how to use. I look at my two cashiers and see, number 2 is open and would be quicker with the return. She can take you at register, number 2 sir, I say with a nod to the register. He gives me a nod and looks at number 2 before shaking his head going to number 1's line. Number 1 is a classic-looking southern gent who was born to be a cashier salesman. He had one customer in his line he was selling some warranties to. Number 2 looks at me but I roll my eyes and shrug knowing Mr. H's type. He is a dude with a question he only wants answered by a dude. So, number 2 starts her shift cleaning duty, which was the window end. I decide to prep myself and man her register for her so at least she could get ahead of her daily duties. Now, what Mr. H doesn't know is, number 1 is not a tool guy, and will not hesitate to send a customer my way to get a sale out of the next person in line. Once you pay for your order, he's done with you and will work around you to get his next sale in. So I hear, Mr. H, hey buddy, I just bought this compressor, hose, and some of those fixings yesterday. I get home and none of it works. Number 1, sorry to hear that buddy, are you looking to return it? You have to bring it all in. And there is a... He gets cut off, but I know he's about to mention the restock fee. Mr. H, no, none of that. I was hoping someone could show me how to work it, I don't know much about compressors. I need to get some work done and a buddy told me it could be done with one of your compressors. Number 1 reaches over his shoulder to get his radio mic before he sees me at register 2. Remember his words, like I did. Number 1, nodding towards me, I don't know anything about compressors, but she can help you over there. She knows all about compressors. Number 1 sees a customer walking towards my line and waves them over, dismissing the guy. Mr. H is now peeved at the dismissal but comes over to me. Hi sir, what's wrong with your compressor? Is it? He cuts me off. Mr. H, is there a man in the back I can speak to about my compressor? At this point I'm internally raging, but keep my retail smile firmly in place. I'm not sure, but I can call one of the guys from the back. Knowing full well that the three guys in back don't. Mr. H, okay, then proceeds to walk away towards the compressor aisle and I decide to FK with him. So I call into the radio for help in the air tool aisle. I call number 2 back to register and stand to the front of the compressor aisle and lean on top of the 4-feet compressor and prepare for my favorite show. Despite working with loud machinery, I pride myself on my hearing. When Fee showed up, the fun began. He is a well-built classic wannabe redneck with cut-off uniform sleeves, tattoo on shoulder and a worn-out camo baseball cap. The sweetest softy with a beer belly you'll ever meet. Istens to every customer, and is often the people person of the logistics group. Mr. H, hey buddy, I could use some help. Fee, sure, what do you need help finding? Mr. H walks him over to the cheap 5-gallon compressor we had, oilless. Which is good for extremely small jobs like an airbrush, or cleaning off wood shop tables, perhaps air up some tires, even. Fact of that matter is that the 5 gallons runs out quick, and it needs to compress air more often. His back is turned to me while Fee is facing me. Mr. H, I bought this one and can't seem to get it to work. I got the couplers and the hose too. Bought to paint some cars I'm looking to restore. Fee, I think you need a bigger compressor to run a paint gun. Mr. H, ignoring the little advice Fee can give. No, this one'll do, but it won't start and I can't make heads or tails of that manual. Fee shrugs. It must be broken. If you bring it in we can exchange it. Or you could return it, but there will be a 20% fee for restock as you've opened it. Mr. H, no, I ain't paying no fee. Obviously upset and starting to fume. You have someone back there WHO can tell me about my compressor. Fee glaces at me and I mouth the name of our chill and calm pothead, Pro. Fee, as a people person, caught onto me, I do let me just call him. Mr. H grumbles about Fee being useless and to call up the guy. Pro comes wandering up the aisle, sees the customer while Fee takes the next aisle to walk to the front. He's seen guys come in and not want to talk to me before and is just wanting to see end result. Pro looks at the guy, then down the aisle further at me. Before he can ask the question, Mr. H says the words to seal his fate with Pro and I. Keep in mind, Pro doesn't wear a headset. Mr. H, look, son. I've been working with compressors my whole life and there is something wrong with the one I bought here. The guys here can't tell me nothing. I plugged the thing in and it doesn't even start. At that point I knew exactly what was wrong with it. Pro, do you want to bring it in so I can see what's wrong? Mr. H, finally someone who knows something. He then proceeds to leave toward the door to get the compressor and stops by me. I knew there was a man in here who knew about compressors, thank you ma'am. He looked smug. He leaves out the front door, and then Fee, who was standing up front, chuckles, because he knows I'm mad. Pro, you good here guys, I was about to go on break. Fee, it's slow, you can take a break later. Number 1 just went on break, take his register. Pro, did you get defects done yet? He grins and gives a salute while heading toward the back. Number 2 is cleaning the registers now, not paying us any mind, as long as she didn't have to deal with the guy. Pro, what do you want me to do? Just plug it up, it's only the reset switch. Hey, ask loud for help and turn up the speaker on your radio. There were no customers in the store as it was a slow day. Seeing as this was the only entertainment we'll get, I wanted to draw it out. A few minutes later, Mr. H walks back in with the compressor and no box. The reset switch is obviously depressed still. Pro leads him to an outlet and has him plug it up and switch it on. Nothing happens. Mr. H, see, the thing is broken. I know enough about compressors to see that. Pro nods his head and lifts his radio to his mouth. Pro, hey loud, I got a guy up here whose compressor is broken, what should I do? He then held it away from his face as the guy looks confused. I walk over and lean against the wall where the compressor is plugged up at. Look at the guy who was looking at Pro, and wait for the berating to begin. Loud never likes to be interrupted while he's working in the back and can talk forever on the radios. Loud, verbatim, oh my god. I'm in the middle of stacking these DN toolboxes while you as wipes are off doing nothing but fing off. Need me to wipe your AES too while having to babysit some dumbass? Where the FK is me? Why didn't you ask her first? She's the one always working that D****N aisle. Go ask her and leave me alone while I get some real work down. She's off with some stupid clipboard having me do all the work anyway. If I Pro muted his radio and looked at me. I took out my earpiece so I didn't have to hear. I reached down and flipped the reset switch on the compressor, and immediately, the thing starts going and filling its tank with air. Mr. H is red in the face at this point. Oh wow, it's not broken after all. I said with mock enthusiasm. If you would have asked me first, I would have had this solved ages ago. Mr. H, now look here, I don't want it. Give me my D***N money back. Only a couple minutes are left of my LOD duty at this point. Number 1 is still on break. Alrighty, she'll be glad to take you on register too. He brushes past me and storms up to the register, and I prepare to salt the wounds. Pro gestures to go outside for his much-needed break and I nod. Number 2 takes his receipt and rings up his return for the compressor. Number 2, okay, that will be $38 going back on your card. Mr. H, yelling, no, I paid almost $70. I want all my money back. Me, sir, don't yell at my cashier. You only paid about $48 for that compressor and the fee as 20% comes to about $9. Which means you only get $38 back. Mr. H, no, I paid and I want all my money back. Me, you have a fee on that compressor, and you still have the hose and couplers. It's the $38 or you can take the compressor to another location. I can't help you here, sir. Mr. H, I don't want that got D***N thing. Let me speak to your manager, he'll sort this out. I tapped my name badge. Me, the manager, is at conference for the week, and left me in charge. How may I help you? Giving a retail smile. Number 2 had at this point pushed the refund to his card and gave him his receipt on the counter. Red in the face, he snatched the receipt up and stormed out the door. Me, with a shit-eating grin, call out the door to him, you'll want a bigger tank, sir, without the reset switch this time, sir. Wouldn't want that paint uneven, sir. But what would I know, you've been working with compressors your whole life. I get flipped a bird, and if he ever came back with the hose and couplers. Wasn't on my shift. He wasn't the type to tell his buddy a chick knew more about a tool than he did anyway. P.S. The cheap compressor is packed tight with styrofoam, and it often presses down the reset lever switch. It looks so natural in the down position that people often came in with that problem. Bad manufacturing in my opinion. What do you think about this story? Tell me your thought in the comments. If you liked the story and the content, please leave a like, subscribe and share this video. Also have a look into my playlist for more entertaining stories. Hey everybody! And a warm welcome to a new story. Today's story is called My Mother Destroyed My Childhood, Made Me Fail Out of College, and Laughed When I Was Homeless. I destroyed her entire life, from the ProRevenge subreddit. I hope you like it and will enjoy the time. If you like my content and this kind of videos, please leave a comment and subscribe to my channel. As always, this story is told from the OP's point of view. Enjoy it. I'm sorry this post is so long. I'm also sorry to all the people who suggested I take the high road. I didn't. You were all right, it didn't make me feel better. I know the deliberate steps I took to purposely ruin my mother's life makes me a bad person. I'm willing to accept that, and I'm going to continue trying to become the person I believe I can be. Rehash, for those who aren't aware of my life, I'll try to summarize it all, but it's not something that's easily put into a short paragraph or two. Growing up with my mother was worse than hell. If you've ever wondered what it would be like if your worst enemy went back in time to raise you, you'd understand my life. At some point around 9 to 10 I began to realize how alone I was and how exhausting my life would turn out to be. I kept hoping, this time, she'd finally just continue wailing on me. Hoping she'd just never stop beating me and finish the job. Either that or I'd be so close to death she'd be forced to take me to the hospital where they would question her and I'd somehow be saved. It seemed like nobody ever cared enough to look deeper. Dislocated my shoulder with a cast iron pipe, beating me every night until I ate things I was slightly allergic to, and then beating me more for throwing it. You lit my Christmas presents I got, then having to be held back by her boyfriend at the time because she was holding a knife to my neck, telling me for the millionth time that I was worth less than my father and nobody else would care if she did it. I could fill pages with all the things she did to me. I remember when she really started digging in and telling me I was worthless nearly every day. I was 13 and it was the first time I started contemplating suicide, though I was always too weak to follow through. My mother tried to kill me 3 or 4 times if you count a half-assed poisoning. I say half-assed only because I vaguely remember the details, but it involved her forcing me to drink something with bleach in it. It's kinda funny in a sick way because I didn't even remember that until now, and that's not as bad as all the things I've put a lot of effort into not remembering. I just have memory, so I guess it helps. I don't think I've actually went longer than a few weeks without getting beaten bloody over something trivial like not washing dishes fast enough or walking away too hard after just getting beat up by her. Years of physical and psychological attacks. Did I call the cops? Of course I did. Can you imagine how hard it was to watch my mother smile and lie to the cops? Telling them I was exaggerating. Then having to watch them get into their cars and drive away knowing I had to go back inside. In the beginning I had hoped things would change. Towards my teen years I started drinking and stopped caring, and now here I am after all of it, somehow still alive. My stepdad used to tell me years after his divorce with my mother that he only stayed with her because he was afraid she'd kill me one day. He's lucky he never saw how much worse it got when he wasn't there to take the hits for me anymore. It would break his heart. He was also the one who told me about my mother's being sexually abused while growing up in a different country, which helped me to gain some perspective in my teens, not that it made a difference by then. It didn't matter to me because each and every day she had a choice every time and she'd choose to hurt me every time. Maybe I'm overstating things considering she didn't actually kill me even though she has come close so many times. Maybe that means deep down she secretly cared about me or something. I don't know. I don't think about it. She did go out of her way to buy me new electronics often, but she'd end up using those as leverage against me and invading my privacy constantly, so it ultimately wasn't that much of anything. After everything and all the times she kicked me out from 13 to 17 years old, I was always on edge. She told me when I was 18 while I was staying with my aunt that if I went to college, I'd always have a place to live. I don't know why I believed her. I had went to go stay with my aunt temporarily for 4 to 6 months after my mother kicked me out of the house at 17, but my mother would always stop by and buy groceries for me or leave me cash. She was unnaturally kind to me while I was there. By this point she wasn't hitting me anymore and was more so prone to just verbal attacks, but since I was never really around her anymore, life seemed to get easier. My mother had learned more than enough ways to fuck with me without touching me. It seemed like she hated me more than I hated myself at times. My aunt couldn't have me stay with her anymore as she really liked her privacy. I had already been there for a while, and I was a emotionally damaged and rebellious teenager she didn't have time to help. So, I went back to my mother's house for the last time and started attending community college full-time. I didn't really have any desire or passion, I was just an empty husk going through the motions, but I was still trying my best to keep living even when I didn't feel the will, in the hopes that one day I'd feel something different for once. My mother, of course, decided to go back to her old habits. Things like dumping all the trash with dirty diapers and old food or dirty dishes filled with water on my bed when I was out if I forgot to do them, and sometimes just because she was in a mood. Locking me out in the snow for hours because I didn't respond to a text or something even if I had class in a few hours. I wasn't even allowed to have keys. She'd pretend not to hear me when I rang the doorbell or knocked for hours. She'd also tell my younger sister to ignore it. I'd eventually end up having to sleep on the steps outside or at a friend's house and get punished for doing it even though I was 18 because it was her house and her rules. It was always non-stop. I had no real direction and I honestly had no plans to exist past 25 years old. Despite literally all of that and then some, I was doing well in school, community college, with a 3.6-ish GPA. I finally left my mother's house for the last time a few days before finals week. I came home from drinking with friends and was met with my mother glaring at me when I rang the bell at 9 p.m. yelling when I'd move out as soon as I walked in. She followed me to my little closet of a bedroom where I tried to close the door behind me and she half ripped the door off the hinges. I just sat there on my bed and stared at her silently as she kept cursing and screaming questions at me. My mother then walks away and as I'm in the kitchen getting juice I hear her on the phone calling the cops on me, claiming she was scared I'd murder her or my younger siblings. I just didn't have the energy to deal. This was 3 days before I failed all of my finals because I couldn't even make it. I was dealing with too much. So, I went and grabbed whatever I had and left 15 minutes later. My mother and I only ever really communicated via email after, though it was very rarely and it was very businesslike. I'd tell her what I needed and she'd either tell me to F*** off or give it to me. It was hard to maintain consistency in my life then. I was at rock bottom all the time. I didn't care about anything, I drank every day, hung out with the worst kind of people who brought out the worst in me. I bounced between cheap rooms and couches. It was early 2016 when I discovered photography and it completely changed the direction of my life. I didn't hang out with anyone or bother trying to maintain all the pointless relationships. I just dove headfirst into it. I was able to put the things I didn't understand about myself into perspective. For the first time in my life, I felt something. Not like a feeling per se. Just like this sense of possibility. For the first time, I was seriously wondering just what I could be capable of. I had something to look forward to. I felt like if I pushed myself as hard as possible I'd be good at something and I'd be a good person. And so I isolated myself from nearly everyone I knew and spent every single day learning or practicing or being frustrated that I wasn't getting results. Even though I was drinking heavily, I always held a job and kept doing photo shoots and kept practicing like mad. I eventually got my first apartment and was functional for a year. Did I have my shish *** together? Hell no, but I was figuring my shish *** out. Cue one of the worst days of my life followed by an email by my mother asking how I've been. We ended up talking on the phone and it was civil for like 3 minutes before I mentioned how hard things have really been for me. She was bragging about some new expensive speaker system she bought and I like a dumbass asked her for money, about $100. I told her if I could give my landlord anything he'd be reasonable and give me time to get more cash together and I'd be fine. Lol, that obviously did not go well at all. It all escalates to her literally laughing and then telling me it was my own fault for being homeless. She also completely denied ever abusing me when I stated I was in the situation because of her. I hung up on her. My thoughts were all over the place and I felt this intense frustration more so than anger. Within a few moments my head cleared and I had decided something as I was sitting in my bedroom 5 or so minutes after the call. I decided that was going to completely ruin my mother's life no matter what. Revenge, and so I did. I called CPS on her and informed them of my history of abuse at her hands. I informed them about the dozens upon dozens of old photos I have of myself all bloody and bruised up. I previously compiled as much evidence as possible in my teens though never did anything with it until that point. That sparked a visit which led to an emergency removal of my 3 younger siblings when they caught my mother punishing my little sister coincidentally when they happened to do a visit. My mother was also arrested but released hours later. I reached out to the job she got years ago with the fake resume she made me write for her and made them aware of her falsehoods. Because of her field, it was promptly looked into and she was fired as well as blacklisted. She lost nearly $80K plus salary. I then deleted every email in all of the email accounts I made for her because she never changed the passwords. Afterwards, I deleted the email accounts themselves. Within a few weeks things were definitely going downhill for her. My youngest sister's dad was engaged to my mother and is now trying to file for sole custody of my little sister who's in CPS custody. I'm sure he wasn't happy finding out what his baby daughter has in store if my mother was given free rein. She's missed her court appointments and I know she hasn't been able to pay her mortgage since last year as I've heard she had to ask one of her friends for money. Her life had become a creamy messy shish *** symphony and I was the fecal splattered conductor. It was all going to S***. She went radio silent for months and had a warrant after missing another court date. This was all fall, winter of last year that she was off the grid so I went on with my life. Early 2019 I get a random call from her and find out she went to her home country months ago after everything went to shish asterisk. How she was allowed on a plane? I have no clue. So cue another geyser of bull asterisk asterisk spewing from my mother's mouth. She's telling me I need to tell CPS she's a good mom and that she's never abused them or me. It's unbelievable. So I cut her off and I shut her up. I was a little buzzed when she had called and had always mentally prepared for this moment. I started slowly telling her in graphic detail about all the gross shish asterisk asterisk I used to do to her food because F asterisk asterisk it. I told her how I used pi asterisk asterisk in the pitcher of the Lipton iced tea she used to force me to make for her and then not allow me to have. I told her how I'd secretly sabotage her utensils with my butt cheeks before serving her food. She was quiet at first but then began cursing me out, though it didn't bother me. I'm on a roll and I wasn't listening. Her words didn't matter to me anymore. She's blaming me for her life turning out so terribly while fully unaware of how true that statement is in terms of the situation she was currently in. She shuts up long enough for me to get one more word in before hanging up and blocking her number. I thought that was the end of it. I expected my last post to be my final update, but as I've said before, my life is a shish asterisk asterisk symphony. Asterisk the official update asterisk, my aunt and I recently reconnected about 2 months ago. Prior to last month, I haven't seen her in years. We met up and had a long conversation about life and everything, and then she admitted that she talks to my mother nearly every day. She had mentioned all the things happening to my mother but didn't know it was me who started this all. She actually felt really bad for my mother, but my aunt was always a really caring person, so I understand, I guess. I told her I was very uncomfortable with the thought of her talking about me to my mother and asked her not to. My aunt did it anyways. After meeting up with my aunt, I learned through her that my mother was finally coming back to America. She was arriving at the airport in 1 week. The problem was my aunt told her that I was going with her so the three of us could all talk without telling me. I didn't know what the feeling of betrayal really felt like until my aunt told me that. To be honest, as wrong as it sounds, I'd rather my mother just think I died or something our phone call. But my aunt kept insisting that I had to give my mother another chance and I had to learn to be open-minded, and that though she wasn't there all the times my mom did horrible shish asterisk asterisk to me, she loved us both and wanted us to get along. Like I'm supposed to just get along with someone who has tried to murder me. Like my mother has choked me awake for school. If you don't know what it's like to forcefully wake up not being able to breathe and seeing your own mother standing over you at 5 a.m. angrily and tightly gripping your throat, count yourself lucky. But, as I said at the beginning of this post, I've already resolved myself to being a bad person, and so I lied to one of the only people who was kind to me, and I promised my aunt I'd try to have a heart-to-heart with my mom and her and talk out the nearly 20 years of abuse. Obviously that was not happening. When we got off the phone, I called the detectives who gave me their number months back in case I heard from my mother. I asked them a few leading questions about what would happen if so and so were discovered, and then I made my plan. I wasn't sure if my mother would make it past customs. How is she able to travel to a different country with a warrant? I didn't know, but if she did, I'd call the police in the bathroom and wait for them to arrive while I sat with my mother. Cue my mother making it past fucking customs because she's my mother. She's a horrible person, but she's good at what she does, which is being horrible. I digress. My mother calls my aunt when she's getting off the planes, and my aunt says she's going to meet her. I told my aunt I'd wait for them in the little Starbucks and then we'd all drive somewhere else. My aunt agreed and went off. I called the detective and told him that my mother was standing a few feet away from me and if they could meet me at our destination we were going to. They told me that was unnecessary and that they'd have officers closer to me come and apprehend her at the airport instead. And so I waited and waited. And then I finally saw them arriving both at the same time. The 3 to 4 officers who had convened in those few passing minutes and actively searching around the food court I sat close to. My mother and my aunt walking down the gate towards me. I felt this overwhelming weight in my chest just kind of settling down deeper and deeper into my gut the closer they got and the more the officers searched. What if they stopped looking when my mother arrived? What if my mother somehow got away with this shish *** again? Countless thoughts, but I just bit them back. I've grown very talented at silencing whatever my inner turmoil of the day happened to be. But my mother and my aunt were animatedly talking as they made their way to where I was sitting. Before they had a chance to say anything, I quickly jumped up and said, "I ordered some teas, let me go see if they're ready," which was the first thing I could think of as they were sitting, but it worked and I dashed off past the cash register to the Starbucks and to the outer part of the food court. Looking back, saying I had to go grab some tea probably wasn't the best thing to say, but I digress. I made it a few feet out the door and half jogged over to the officers who were still looking around the food court area. From where they were, they wouldn't have seen us sitting. I walked over and asked them if they had gotten a call about a woman who had a warrant or something. I mentioned that the detectives said officers in or near the airport would arrest her. They said they did and I told them it was my mother. I told them her first name and they verified her last name. I told them she was sitting right in the Starbucks waiting for jail and one of the cops chuckled. Seemed a bit surprised and judgy that I was pointing them right to my mom. I told them I'd go make sure she didn't leave and they followed behind by like 10 to 15 paces. I half jogged back inside and up to the little table where they were sitting. My mother had that half scowl she always wore whenever she looked up at me when I popped up out of nowhere, and my aunt began asking me where the drinks were before I cut her off and looked dead at my mother and her scowling face, which had quickly changed into confusion when I had finished my sentence. "Mom, I know we don't get along, but I wanted to let you know it's all my fault." Cue my mother starting to ask me with this kind of soft motherly voice, "What do you mean it's your fault? Why do you tea?" But of course I cut her off because there's nothing she hates more than being cut off, and I finally have the power in this situation. "Look, B**********. I want you to know exactly whose fault it is and whose ******** drank when you're sitting in jail wondering why the world did you so wrong." She sputtered something and slapped the fucking shish *** out of me. My aunt's jaw dropped. People are watching. The cops saw it happen as well, as only a few seconds had passed from when I walked in. Into handcuffs she goes. Now she's showing her true colors. Cursing and saying all kinds of things you couldn't imagine a mom saying to her kid. Telling me she'd fucking kill me and so on, etc. I calmly walked behind them as long as I could until they took her to some room and held her until the detective arrived. I wasn't there that long though, as the lack of thrill of it all kind of got to me and I went home to break a 2-month sober streak. I was there long enough for my aunt to tell me she was disappointed in me and that she doesn't know if she can forgive me for doing something so spiteful and disgusting to her sister. To be fair, I did it completely out of spite, so she isn't wrong. I've already acknowledged I'm not a good person for what I did. Come to find out, my mother was using my aunt's passport to leave and come back to the country multiple times since she left. That's why they never caught her. Now my aunt has some explaining to do, but I wish she didn't have to get caught up in all of this. She has always been kind to me and doesn't deserve it. My mother is facing up to 10 years just for using my aunt's passport alone and a slew of other charges, including one for child endangerment. Her husband left her. Her kids were taken from her. Her friends have seemingly distanced themselves from her from what I know. After 19 years of abuse, I finally get my revenge, and none of the charges have anything to do with me, which is interesting. Did it feel good? No. I felt nothing. Just the rise and fall of the situation, but nothing really concrete. I expected to feel something. Not even satisfaction or happiness, but something. Either way, the only thing for me to do is continue to work towards becoming the person I want to be. She told me constantly that I was worthless and that I'm nothing. I've told myself the same consistently as well in the past. I've decided I'm going to become one of the greatest photographers of my time, and I'm going to push myself as hard as possible to succeed so that anyone else who has ever suffered how I have now have no reason to doubt themselves or their ability to be great one day. As for me right now, I currently live in a homeless shelter. I decided to go to one 6 months ago after realizing all the drinking and inconsistency was making it hard for me to move forward. I wasn't saving money and was couch hopping from friend's house to friend's house. A few weeks ago I got a voucher from the GOVT, and sometime in the next 2 months I can find a 1-bedroom or a studio apartment. I've been aggressively saving my small checks. I've been practicing and working on building better habits and just being a better photographer. I don't make much right now, and I know many people will say it's a stupid dream, but I know if I put all of effort into making this work, I can not only be a self-sustaining photographer but more than that. My situation is embarrassing and it's hard, but I know I won't be here longer than another few months. It's not some dream. It's a plan. I'll also be going back to school in the fall and pursuing photography. As for my siblings, that situation is still a bit dicey, and I don't think I'll give an update about that, but they're all doing very well. As far as my mother is concerned, as horrible as she was towards me, the only part of me that even thinks about her on rare occasions hopes she isn't having a horrible time. I don't like knowing people are hurting. What do you think about this story? Tell me your thought in the comments. If you like the story and the content, please leave a like, subscribe and share this video. Also have a look into my playlist for more entertaining stories.